The boss of the Commonwealth Bank is calling for a major cut to migration levels to help home affordability.
The CEO of one of the biggest businesses in Australia saying we need to cut migration in order to make housing more affordable.
For years, it has felt like we were living in a gaslit nation. You look at your rent doubling. You see the line of 100 people snaking around the block for a single mouldy apartment. You watch the dream of owning a home, not a mansion, just a home, drift further and further away, becoming a fantasy for your children. And every time you point to the obvious, every time you mention the record-breaking, city-choking numbers of people flooding into the country, you're shouted down. You're a racist, a bigot, a xenophobe. The establishment, the politicians, the media, the corporate lobbyists, they all sing from the same hymn sheet. Nothing to see here. Immigration is an unalloyed good. The housing crisis is just a supply issue. They have built a cathedral of lies, and we were the heretics for daring to whisper the truth. They told us that bringing in millions of people had no effect on house prices, a claim that defies the basic laws of supply and demand, a claim so absurd it's like arguing that pouring water into a glass won't make it fuller. They told us we needed mass migration to have a strong economy, conveniently ignoring the fact that an economy where people can't afford a roof over their heads is not a strong economy. It's a failed society. They built this wall of denial, brick by brick, and anyone who dared to point at the cracks was immediately cancelled. But what happens when the high priest of that very cathedral walks to the pulpit, clears his throat, and admits the entire religion is a fraud? What happens when the biggest banker in the entire country, the man who profits most from the housing bubble, admits that the heretics were right all along? That's what just happened. The dam has broken. The truth is out, and it came from the most unlikely source imaginable. This is the moment the establishment lost control of the narrative. This is the proof that the destruction of our housing market was not an accident. It was a policy. We are the resistance, and we have been screaming this from the rooftops while they called us crazy. Now, their own people are validating our truth. To keep this truth alive, to fight the spin that is desperately trying to bury this story, we need you. Join our Patreon. It is the only way we can continue to be your voice. The front line in the war against the gaslighting of an entire nation. The link is in the description, because the truth is finally breaking through and we need to turn this crack into a flood. On November 18th, 2025, in a sterile committee room in Parliament House, the unthinkable happened. Matt Comyn, the Chief Executive Officer of the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, the biggest bank in the nation, sat before a panel of politicians. He was there for the usual annual grilling, the political theatre where MPs pretend to hold the banks to account. But then, under questioning, Comyn did something extraordinary. He didn't just answer a question. He volunteered a truth so toxic to the Canberra establishment that it sent shockwaves through the entire political landscape. He stated clearly and unequivocally that to fix the housing crisis, Australia needed significant migration cuts.
Where there is a predictable level of migration, perhaps that number is something in the order of 180,000 per annum, gives both the Commonwealth and states the ability to plan for critical infrastructure, including housing.
He even gave a number. He said the permanent migration intake should be in the order of 180,000 per annum. Let's be clear about what that means. The government is currently forecasting a net overseas migration number of 260,000 for this financial year. Comyn, the boss of the CBA, is calling for a cut of over 80,000 people a year. And just to prove this wasn't a slip of the tongue, the CEO of Westpac, Australia's second biggest bank, backed him up, saying Comyn's number was very close to right, if not right.
I'm sure Matt's very close to right, if not right.
Do you understand the magnitude of this? This is not some fringe commentator. This is not a politician from a minor party. This is the absolute heart of the Australian financial establishment. Banks profit from higher house prices. It's their entire business model. Bigger prices mean bigger mortgages, which means bigger profits for them. For the CEO of the country's biggest mortgage lender to publicly call for a policy that would lower house prices is the equivalent of the fox guarding the hen house, suddenly screaming that the chickens are being slaughtered. It is an admission against interest of the highest order. It is a confession that the situation is now so dire, so catastrophic, that even the people getting rich from the disaster can no longer keep up the charade. For years, the official line has been that we just need to build more houses. It was a convenient lie that allowed the government to keep the immigration floodgates open while pretending to do something about the crisis.
The other issue is that it is basically the only thing that is propping up our economy at the moment. We've got this real Ponzi scheme economy, and obviously migration suits Labor politically.
But Matt Common's admission exposes the mathematical absurdity of that lie. Right now, Australia has a cumulative housing shortage of over 200,000 homes. That's the hole we are already in. To have any hope of catching up, we would need to stop digging. Instead, the Albanese government is pouring petrol on the fire. Their own forecast is for 260,000 new people to arrive this year alone. Think about that. We are already 200,000 homes short, and we are adding a population the size of Hobart every single year. The government's grand plan, the 1.2 million homes target, is already a smoking ruin. We are falling short by over 60,000 homes a year on that target. It's like trying to fill a bathtub with a thimble while the tap is gushing at full blast. Let's do the simple maths that our politicians pretend is too complicated. A net migration of 260,000 people at an average household size of 2.5 people means we need to find an extra 104,000 homes every single year just to break even. That's before we even start to address the existing 200,000 home shortfall. And how many homes are we actually building? We are falling short of the government's own, already inadequate target by over 60,000 homes a year. So every year the housing hole gets deeper by at least 164,000 homes. This isn't a leak, it's a gaping chasm. You can't build your way out of a crisis when you are deliberately importing more demand than you could ever possibly supply. It is physically, logistically, and economically impossible. This isn't a market failure. This is a policy success. The government knows these numbers. They have the best data, the best economists. They know that bringing in hundreds of thousands of people when there are no homes for them will cause prices and rents to skyrocket. And they do it anyway. Why? Because a housing crisis is incredibly profitable. Just not for you. So the head of Australia's biggest bank makes this bombshell admission. A clear, actionable policy suggestion to alleviate the worst housing crisis in our nation's history. And what is the response from our Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese? Crickets, vague platitudes, a pivot to talking about skilled migration and carefully tailored programs. Nothing. Why the silence? Why is the Prime Minister of Australia ignoring the CEO of the Commonwealth Bank on the single biggest issue facing Australians? Because Matt Common just exposed the entire economic model of modern Australia as a rigged game. High immigration creates a constant artificial demand for housing. This inflates property values, making existing property owners feel wealthy. It generates billions in stamp duty and tax revenue for state and federal governments. It allows big construction firms to charge a premium. And yes, it creates bigger mortgages for the banks. It is a conspiracy of shared interests between big government, big business and big banks. And you, the renter, the first home buyer, the young Australian family, you are the sacrifice. You are the raw material being fed into the machine to keep it running. Albanese can't admit Common is right, because that would be admitting that his government and the governments before it have deliberately and knowingly sold out an entire generation of Australians to keep this Ponzi scheme going. This is a deliberate policy choice. They are choosing to sacrifice your dream of a home for their own economic and political benefit. The silence from the Prime Minister's office isn't a sign of indecision. It's the sound of guilt. It's the sound of a government that has been caught red-handed, hoping that if they just stay quiet, the story will go away. This is the watershed moment. The admission from Matt Comyn proves that this is not a housing crisis. It is a housing policy. It is a deliberate, calculated transfer of wealth from the young and the poor to the old and the wealthy. It is a system designed to turn a basic human need, shelter, into a speculative commodity, forever out of reach for millions, for years. They told you it was your fault. You weren't working hard enough. You were spending too much on avocado toast. You weren't saving enough. It was all a lie. A cruel lie designed to hide the truth. The system is rigged against you. They pointed the finger at you, the individual, to distract from their own systemic sabotage. They wanted you to feel like a personal failure so you wouldn't look up and see the political machine that was actively engineering your failure. Every parent watching their kids give up on the Australian dream, every renter feeling the sickening lurch of another 20% rent increase, every young person working 2 jobs just to afford a shoebox apartment. This was not your fault. It was a choice made for you by people who will never have to live with the consequences. And now, the man who runs the biggest casino at the heart of that rigged system has just admitted it. Will other business leaders now break ranks? Will the media be forced to cover this story honestly instead of burying it on page 17? That depends on us. It depends on you. They are counting on this being a one-day story. They are counting on you to get distracted, to get tired, to give up hope. We cannot let that happen. This is the smoking gun. This is the proof. The establishment is finally admitting what we've known all along. The housing market was deliberately destroyed, and mass immigration was the weapon they used to do it. You need to share this video. You need to send it to your friends, your family, your local MP. Do not let them bury this confession. By supporting this channel on Patreon, you are not just funding videos, you are funding a counter-offensive. You're creating a voice for the silenced majority. You're ensuring that this truth, now that it is out, is not forgotten. We will hold them to account. We will repeat this confession until every Australian understands how they have been betrayed. The link is in the description. Join the resistance, because the people who broke the system cannot be trusted to fix it. To see the latest Australian crisis, click this video here.